Well, hello and welcome to the Tucson Metro Chamber channel right here. I'm Jennifer English, and I'm thrilled to be with the President and CEO of the Tucson Metro Chamber of Commerce. Our friend Amber Smith is here, and we have big news. We are launching and celebrating something that's really a silver lining in this very troubling time for our hospitality industry. We've got the Tucson Restaurant Advisory Council launching the Keep Tucson Cooking initiative that is going to be a powerful tool, resource, and support for our hospitality industry. And it's a thrill to get to talk to Amber to launch this together. What a privilege it is to be here. And thank you on behalf of all of our friends who are the pivotal and essential part of our culture and community, the operators and restaurateurs who make up the heart and soul of what Tucson tastes like. And as a city of gastronomy, we prize that part of who we are. So first of all, Amber, welcome and thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Are you kidding? Those are the folks that keep me very well fed locally. And they're the ones that inspired my mom to get a house here because of our food culture. So it's absolutely my pleasure to highlight the restaurant industry, especially during these times.
Let's talk how important food is to the identity of who Tucson is and what this community is all about.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the best way to say it is our restaurants give the community the taste and feel of our community. And especially Tucson, that, as you pointed out, the #1 UNESCO City of Gastronomy in America, that highlights our unique food culture. I mean, the fact that we have so many visitors that come here just to try our food because it is unique, it is different, and it is delicious. And so that is what is most monumental, is Tucson is unique. And one of the largest factors that contributes to that is our unique food culture.
I would imagine that you have one of the greatest jobs in the world talking about a place that we all love, Tucson, Arizona. And it really is one of the most delicious places on the planet. For over 20 years, I have professionally been going out in the world and talking about how delicious Tucson is. And when I first got started, people would scratch their head because they might not have realized that we are truly one of the rare places that has been cultivating food for over 4,000 years continuously. That was what the basis of the City of Gastronomy designation was all about. But one cannot cultivate food without cultivating simultaneously the culture, the conviviality. I think Tucson is absolutely professional to the nth degree at cultivating conviviality. It is what makes coming here so fun. And that must be such a fun part of your job. Will you talk a little bit about that?
You're right. I mean, when we do actually magazine every year, and then we also have a third party that comes in and creates a visitor's guide. And those different companies that do that always put a person on a horse on the cover. And we push back and fight against that because so clearly these are people that haven't been to Tucson. I mean, we have evoke this image that we are just cowboys. And while that certainly contributes to our culture, I would say that our culture is eclectic. That is absolutely our strength. And whenever you survey people, what is the best part of Tucson, they're going to say one of two things. They're going to say sunset or food. So you're right. It is fantastic to be able to highlight that out. As a chamber, people in general know what we do. We represent businesses. But because of the long-standing brand, I mean, our chamber in particular has been around for 125 years. It puts us on a different platform of exposure. So before people come in town, when they do their research, they are looking up the visitor center or the chamber, because chambers historically are one and the same with the visitor center. So we are definitely on those front lines, answering those calls for visitors, talking about what can I see and do in Tucson. And eating is right there at the top of the list of activities.
you are our friend in the business. And Tucson is such a collegial town. We all know somebody in a business, and you know when you have a friend in the business that you get a little bit of extra special attention and treatment. Well, that seems to be the specialty of the chamber. And when it comes to your role as the CEO and president of the chamber, I want you to talk a little bit about the fact that more than other cities, and maybe this is something that you do regularly, but in our conversations, it's been striking to me that in Tucson, there is no them. It's not an us and them. In Tucson, it really is it's just us. And so we are our friends in the business. And as such, you are our friends in the business. How can we understand who we are as a community and as a culture and as an economy and as a place and as people through the eyes and the lens and the heart and the soul of the chamber?
You know, you're absolutely right. The thing about Tucson is we are the biggest small town. I just went to lunch yesterday at one of our independent restaurants and, met up with someone and introduced them to my husband. And even though we live on different sides of town, even though, we're decades apart in age, the commonalities and number of people we know is incredible. And you can say that all over Tucson, that there really is, as the Kevin Bacon thing, 6 degrees of separation. Well, in Tucson, it's more like 2 to 3. So that is part of it. You automatically are going to know someone that knows someone. And therefore, I think that right there is what really evokes that feeling of community and us, because it is us. When you're going to a restaurant and there's that server and she's a single mom, think about all those other single moms that are coming in there who also are working to support their family. Back of the house of restaurants, you have your dishwashers, your cooks, your chefs. These are all people in Tucson that so often went to high school with these same individuals. And through COVID, we're really recognizing how much of an us there is versus a them. And it's definitely contributed to that big town feel in a city of 1 million people.
How has the Tucson Metro Chamber helped Tucson's restaurant industry?
A variety of ways. There's some of those, the automatic ones, education, PPP process, navigating through that system, navigating through some of the new unemployment things coming down from the state and the feds and the state legislature. It was our job to make sure that those folks were informed on how to best access either the expertise to connect to that information or just to get through it in general. So that was a really important initiative right on as soon as that stay-at-home order was placed by the state. Since then, it has been bringing in our elected officials to say, hey, what can we do to help? The state offered a few $1 million to restaurants to help with their outdoor premise permits. And then we helped at the local level to coordinate to get through what is sometimes a cumbersome process. So we try to make sure that it wasn't that cumbersome. We worked with our local officials on what do those social distance standards look like, the physically distant standards in the dining room, because we knew that being able to achieve that was going to be really challenging. So we wanted to try to make it as easy as possible on restaurants. Access to other services at a discounted rate, marketing, all of those little things to drive diners to do takeout, pickup. And one such initiative too is we knew that there was massive unemployment happening. So we helped coordinate either those restaurant workers, those unemployed workers, to be able to receive some donated gift cards for groceries, or on the other side of it, connect those restaurants to some of our first responders who are in a position to be able to help. The chamber is a connector. Ultimately, we are an advocate for business, and we are also that connector through business to out into the community.
But I want to give you some credit, and you're very humble in what you just said. But I've got to actually push and say, some of the things that are very impressive to me as a diner and as a citizen, you really give a lot of care and consideration in every sector. But let's just keep talking about the restaurant industry for a moment. What you do for every diner. What you do for every employee of every place that is open and open for business. You keep us all in the forefront, as well as the actual, owner of the restaurant or the technical one name that might be on the membership card. You have such an extraordinary, compassionate grasp of caring for us all that is very much, I would say, the flavor, the sort of compassion taste of Tucson. I give you credit for that, because this could not have been easy. And I have to wonder, was this part of what led to the creation of the Tucson Metro Chamber Restaurant Advisory Council?
It certainly didn't hurt. In general, I kind of want to help the world. And so I am a bit wired that way. But I also paid myself through college in the food industry. I was also raised by a mother that was waiting tables while raising me, and a father that was a general manager of many restaurants back in the day. So I have a special affinity for the hospitality industry because I actually know what is happening behind those doors. And secondarily, I think the story of the number of tourists that come into our community based on our food culture. So for me, it's so easy to connect the dots as to the significant economic impact our restaurant industry has well beyond just serving food. And I think that that's what's probably most profound. Restaurants were one of the absolute top employers across the country. And so when we look at these unemployment numbers, it's staggering if you look at just this industry. So for all of those reasons, I felt it was incredibly important to help out, because if there were other efforts for sure, and I don't want to put down any other entity that is also trying to help restaurants, because it truly is a partnership and a collaboration, because there is so much work to be done. It shouldn't be on just one person or one group's shoulders. But we also have some really great stewards of the community as well. And Ray Flores of the Flores family, instantly, he and I already were friends. I guess he's had a couple of brands open since, but he has Charo Steak directly across the street from our office. So we've really gotten to know him well. And he's a sophisticated restaurateur that was able to help provide us some guidance and background and a voice to the industry. And so we were able to take some of that and then elevate it and use it more of a bullhorn, expand our efforts, and collectively gain insight and information from dozens of additional restaurateurs and chefs within the community.
Talk about the Tucson Metro Chamber Restaurant Advisory Council and what it is, what's it comprised of, and what's its mission.
So it is a collective of Tucson Metro Chamber members. And quite frankly, we know that restaurants are having difficulties, right? Like that's what this conversation is about. So part of membership is we actually have sponsors that are very tight with the industry that want to help, that are sponsoring some restaurants membership. And again, we create the opportunity to collect voices and advocate for them. We already have a collective in the healthcare industry, construction industry, and HR professionals. So it was really just right in our wheelhouse to establish something for restaurants, knowing the significant impact that they have. So it's restaurants that are chamber members, and it's those other businesses that rely on the success of those restaurants. So we have over 50 individuals participating. We then have a dedicated staff member that hosts monthly meetings. And at one point, really during the height of COVID, they were weekly meetings. And at those meetings, we have a bit of a revolving door, depending on the topic, between 25 and 50 people attending within that industry. We've brought in insurance brokers to educate on things that can be done. We've brought in employment attorneys. We've brought in the governor's office, the Arizona Commerce Authority. So it is a stage for us to be able to provide information to those restaurants that are convened. And then we also talk about policy issues. How can we help you? What would make a difference? So that's our platform, to have those conversations in an organized, collaborative way so that we can really dissect some of these important issues. And we hope that task force will continue on for many more years.
And one of the initiatives that we're celebrating today is the KeepTucsonCooking.com initiative. Would you talk a little bit about Keep Tucson Cooking and how essential it is for our entire community, not just our restaurant industry, in this moment in time?
Absolutely. I mean, so for our entire community, we're talking about jobs. We're talking about future tourism dollars coming in. I mean, this is really genuinely about our local economy. I mean, the fact that why so many of these tourists come to our community, and while tourism seems to be low, you know what's booming? VRBO and Airbnb. People are still coming to Tucson right now. There might be a decline in those hotels and in some flights, but people are still driving here, even if it is just from our friends' area in Phoenix. So we have to make sure to keep those restaurant doors open so that we can feature and put our best foot forward, which is absolutely our restaurants and our food culture. So we want to be able to emphasize that. There are, different platforms where you can find a local restaurant. Sure. You know what? And we welcome all of them because they all feature and highlight restaurants, and we don't know which platform is most popular. We want them all to be used because that means that someone is about to dine at a restaurant. What the KeepTucsonCooking.com is some of that. It is featuring our restaurants that are part of our task force, but it's also a place where you can get information, news, articles about the industry, whether that's a local restaurant or something happening nationally, because it's important to continue to educate our patrons about the relevancy of our restaurants and those employees that are our neighbors, our cousins, our sisters, our old bosses in so many cases. And as well as to be able to put interviews like this as well, because I know that there's going to also be some fantastic interviews with some of our local restaurateurs and chefs. And that's what we really want to get to know. We want to be able to put a face to the industry because it's so important. It's more than, our favorite enchiladas and our favorite cocktail or mocktail, but there's a face behind all of that. And so we want to collect that information and be able to put it up at one site for people to be able to check out and be able to support locally.
So you're a friend in the business, and say somebody was coming to town for the first time and they were lucky enough to have you as our culinary tour guide. What are some of the things that you absolutely find irresistible? And I know you can't pick favorites, but your own personal favorite, what are the dishes you go back to time and again that you really think typify what we've talked about here?
So Kingfisher's shrimp cake combination with the clam chowder is one of my favorites.
You're right. It's so good. So
good. And people wouldn't expect that here in the middle of the desert, but it's so good. And the Charo brand. So Charo Vita, which has vegan food, and I'm not vegan or even a vegetarian by any standard of the definition. But holy cow, the jackfruit tacos are super good. And then just at the regular El Charo brand, the Carlotta special, holy cow, I lick my plate. And in general, I mean, I'm up in Oro Valley, so we have so many local restaurants up here. Harvest Restaurant that sources locally as well. And I think that's something else that we should probably talk about. Is it's not just about the locals that are here and that these are independent restaurants in most cases, but where are they getting their food from? And that was one of those parts of the city of gastronomy that makes us so unique. Is the food source. We are in the desert, and so no one's really thinking, oh, they've got farms and all of that. But holy cow, do we have some farms? We have some farms, we have some unique food. I mean, all of the different things you can do with prickly pear margarita being one of my top favorite parts. And that, I think, is part of what really gives such unique flavor and character to our local restaurants, is because we are using these unique ingredients that you can only find in the Sonoran Desert. And Mexican food, holy cow, there's a reason why we have, 21 miles of Mexican food. And that doesn't even hardly cover it, right?
Yeah.
And people can just come here just to do our Mexican food tour because no two restaurants are alike. It's, either from Mexico City or inspired by, the coast of Mexico. And I'm so glad you didn't say for me to pick my absolute one favorite dish.
I'm sorry. I don't think you can. I don't think any of us can. It's kind of an unfair question.
It really is.
I also have to tell you, the jackfruit tacos, and again, I'm not vegan either. It's one of the most shockingly delicious, irresistible things I've eaten in the last year.
I know.
What is this sorcery that goes into this that makes them so delicious?
It's so true. And then the guacamole as well. I mean, the food that they're sitting there putting that ends up being vegan, you go, how is this even possible?
Right.
To where my husband, who fancies himself a pretty good cook, tracked down some jackfruit in a can because he's like, oh, who knew it was so delicious? And I tried to tell him that he's never going to be able to replicate what he has eaten at Charo Vida, and we really should just be patrons to enjoy it. But what an inspiration of a restaurant.
By the way, do you ever do the bowls at Charo Vida? It's like one of my all-time favorite Tucson foods. The beautiful bowls that they make where you can combine your favorite things.
Yeah, and that actually made me think of some of our other local restaurants is sushi. Again, we're in the desert. Who's expecting to have fantastic sushi? I mean, Sushi Garden, holy cow, where do they get their salmon? And that's, again, what makes it so unique and eclectic in our community. I'm totally overusing the word unique, but I've traveled all over the world, and I haven't found a community that has such diverse options in restaurants doing those diverse options so well. I mean, typically it's something really well one thing, but we have it across the board.
I want to go back to something you said before we have to wrap up, because I know you're on limited time, but I want to thank you. One of the things you said before was how conscientious our local restaurateurs and chefs are about using local ingredients more than almost any other place I know in the country. Our chefs really go out of their way not to support it for philosophical reasons. Yeah. They support local because we have relationships with these farmers and vendors and purveyors and spice blenders and tortilla makers. We shop and use local because they are us. They're our friends. And I, as a food professional, I do travel all over the world, and I do get a great privilege of dining everywhere. And we should mention that the city of gastronomy is not our only designation. In fact, we're also a Delice network city, which means that we're part of a network all over the globe of cities that have such rich culinary traditions, like Lyon, France, site of the basic culinary Olympics. There are places that are so renowned for their food that they're part of this network, and so is Tucson. And Felipe Garcia and our friends at Visit Tucson and Vamos a Tucson are really instrumental in that. And if you want to learn more, that's, of course, very important. But it's because this is who we are. This is what we make. This is what we share. And there's really no other way to celebrate it than to gather around our table. I'm going to give you the last word, Amber Smith, on just how important it is to remind everybody that the mission of Keep Tucson Cooking is to do just that. How can we keep Tucson cooking?
It's pretty basic. Get takeout, dine in, get a gift card. I mean, all of those make such a difference. And I know for some that are financially challenged, guess what? Leave a review for your favorite restaurant about your favorite dish. Those SEOs make an absolute impact. And so we want every single person in this town is eaten somewhere. You can do one of those 4 things. Leave a review, buy a gift card, dine in, or take out.
It's the civic duty of every rail-fed Tucsonan. And Amber Smith, would you do me one favor before we say thank you and goodbye? Would you introduce yourself and where you're from, and just tell us to keep Tucson cooking?
Amber Smith, Tucson Metro Chamber. We want you to keep Tucson cooking.
Can you do one more for me, please?
Amber Smith, President and CEO, Tucson Metro Chamber, and we're here to tell you to keep Tucson cooking.
Thank you, my friend. This has been a privilege.
Thank you.
Keep Tucson cooking. Make sure you take out. Make sure you support our local businesses, because if we've learned anything, it's that in Tucson, there is no them. There's only us. And when you take out, you support us. Thank you.